Katrina, stay right there because I want to bring in our panel now to discuss this economy more. Maddie Doppler, Independent Women's Forum visiting fellow, and Lee Munson, Portfolio Wealth Advisor. Maddie, you're one of my favorites on the economy because you're such a straight shooter, but you're also an optimist. How do you feel about things right now?
I am, and I feel pretty good, Charles. And my optimism is not misplaced. You know, throughout the last several years when I've come on this show talking about economic data, looking for that recovery for those workers who have left the workforce, as Katrina mentioned. You know, we're starting to see some signs of life here, and it cannot be understated that this is the beginning. You mentioned earlier that maybe this is the peak. We've got a long way to go in this economy, and the Tax Cut and Jobs Act is the reason for that. You know, what we saw in the beginning of the year was bonuses for workers, and then we saw our average Americans, their paychecks getting bigger because the withholding tables changed because of the IRS. Now we're entering the third phase of the tax cuts execution, and that means businesses are starting to change their behavior. What that means, the better conditions for workers, wages are going to rise, and we're going to see businesses investing back in their workers and in their businesses here in the United States. That's going to continue to improve economic conditions, and we'll see metrics like this continue to improve.
You know, Lee, I find it interesting because even today when this number was announced, the market wasn't sure how to take it. We were under some pressure until President Trump, in sort of an impromptu moment, talked about perhaps a trade deal coming soon, talked about the stock market. I don't know if he uttered the word stock market in quite a long time. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he's not backing down from it, even though it's been pulling back. He acknowledged that it's going sideways. But overall, we know economically success begets success. And right now we are on a roll.
Well, we are. And you know, I'm supposed to be the bull here, but I have sort of some middling. It's not bearish, but I'm not as impressed with the numbers as we say. You know, the numbers didn't really meet expectations. The manufacturing sector didn't look good, and I was a little bit. I'm still unimpressed with the labor participation rate that's been going down for 2 months in a row and really isn't bigger than last year. Remember, I'm a bull here. I think a lot of what's happening today, I'm all for this, but I think we might be misreading this about why the market rose. I think it's because we're not actually getting a lot of new people participating as much as we would like. That means the Fed is probably not going to hike. So I think people who think the Fed's going to hike because of the numbers today, I think that that's a misread. I think this was a lot about the idea that this trade war isn't going to happen. And like as you say, as soon as those comments got made, the market goes higher. I kind of like that it wasn't as hot as it could have been, because if it gets too hot, if we see too much wage inflation,
and that's Wall Street stuff, right?
Bad.
I mean, we got to separate, I think, in this particular segment, Wall Street from the economy. You know, if wages were up 2.9%, the market would have crashed. You know, Main Street gets so frustrated with that kind of nonsense that, you know, everyone's getting some prosperity, a bite at the apple, and Wall Street thinks, you know what, we should crash this thing. I tell you another thing, though, Lee, you hit on it. Not just China, folks. I'm just hearing news now. President Moon of South Korea is going to visit the White House on May 22nd, Katrina. You feel something major happening perhaps in North Korea along with China. And believe me, that's going to have a positive impact on this economy. What are your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is a huge part of history that the president is making, particularly with North Korea and South Korea, in this attempt to create peace over there, and the willingness that Kim Jong-un is showing. Granted, no one is taking this for granted based upon the history, but this is going to be a massive show of strength by the President of the United States. You have Congress now pushing for the Nobel Peace Prize, which he will be richly deserved. I think it's going to be great to see how this does impact not just the economy, but global economics as a whole.
Yeah, you know, the conspiracy had where myself sometime when the Nobel Committee put off the literary prize, I figured that was putting off the Nobel Peace Prize. But I don't want to digress too much, Maddie. Here's what I find interesting, and Lee brought it up. You know, sometimes we do have to separate Wall Street from Main Street because we are reading stories now where Burlington Northern paying out $25,000 bonuses. And I'm going to tell you something. No one could dispute the goods producing part of this jobs report today. 49,000 jobs, construction jobs, manufacturing jobs, mining jobs. These are areas that we were told as Americans would never come back.
Yep. Charles, I like the point you made about not conflating monetary policy with economic policy, because what we talk about when we're talking about what's the Fed going to do, what we're going to see as the cascading effect of good Wall Street numbers, is that words like inflation, these are scary words when the fundamentals aren't strong. But when we have policy in place that prepares us for an increase in the labor market moving forward, for stronger economic activity here in the United States, those are the sorts of things where we don't have to see we won't see all the hand-wringing that we've experienced over the last couple of years, because we don't have a timid economy anymore. What the president said when he wanted to pass tax reform was that we need to have a competitive American economy again, and that is what we're seeing with these jobs numbers and with economic metrics as we continue to move into the second quarter of this year, which is that the United States is open for business.
You know, Lee, headlines have cast a shadow over this market. The occasional change in President Trump's legal team. We've seen markets get derailed intraday on that kind of stuff. You know, what may happen in North Korea, what may happen in China. What if now they could become springboards? What if we do get some sort of compromise out of China? What if we do get some form of peace in the Korean Peninsula? What could that mean for the economy and the market?
Well, it's obviously going to go up. You know, I was trying to explain to my kids, if you're in a forest and a bear poo-poos on the stock market, does anybody listen? Well, apparently the last month they've been listening. We've been talking about what they're smoking on Wall Street to be so bearish. But I think the numbers today, and I think the fact that, like I've been saying, the trade war is just a negotiation tactic to make this move forward.
Right.
When we make peace with North Korea, maybe it's more important that we make peace with China and get the trade rolling, something that's fair to both parties. It might be
I got to cut in here, Lee. I'm sorry, because we've got
by the end of this year, I think we go higher.
We got some breaking news. You all were fantastic. Thank you very much.